Hello, Ridgefield Playhouse, and welcome to another edition of Reel to Reel, where we spotlight real life on film. Now, you just had a chance to see the movie Everything, Everywhere, all at once. So now we're going to get a chance to talk about the film with my guest, Michelle Sugihara. And let me just give you a little bit of background on her. She is the executive director of CAPE, which is an acronym for Coalition of Asian Pacifics in Entertainment. It is the premier nonprofit organization creating opportunities and driving change for Asian and Pacific Islander success in Hollywood. Now, that's a mouthful, Michelle. It sounds like you've got a huge responsibility with CAPE, and I do want to talk a little bit about that. But I first want to go into the fact that this film, and it's almost hard to give it a certain kind of genre because it really does reflect a little bit of everything: sci-fi, adventure, you name it, and fantastical images, etc. But here's the thing: I think for me, last year when we watched the Oscars, it was such a stellar night. The fact that this film was seen by, I think I read, about 18 million people. It was already nominated with 11 different nominations, and it collected 7 Oscars in all the major categories. So let me ask you, first of all, what was your reaction when you sat at home or wherever you were seated for the Oscars? What went through you when you saw that historic moment take place with all of those Oscars being coveted by an amazing array of people?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's really
Of course.
exciting to be here talking to you. And I'm really excited that this audience just got to watch Everything Everywhere all at once. And yeah, great question. I got to watch it at the Academy Museum. And so we were in this massive auditorium. It's a brand new facility here in Los Angeles. And when the Oscars were announced, the entire room erupted. It was like 1,000 people in that room. And it was just really, what a feeling. It was tremendous.
When I think about that moment and I think about going back to some of those speeches that were rendered, it was so heartfelt because you can also just kind of imagine what went through every person who worked on that set for that given period of time, and the fact that it just really resonated with so many people. And I'm going to ask you, what made it, in your opinion, resonate with folks all across the board of all different backgrounds?
I mean, the film is it's so well crafted and constructed. There's so many layers. For some of the people who this may have been the first time you've watched it, and like for me, I know I had to watch it multiple times even to catch everything because it comes at such a quick pace.
It's a fast pace, right?
Absolutely quick, and it's blink if you miss it sometimes. And so I just think there's so much to mine there, and there's so many different points that people can resonate with. And so that's what I think is was so beautifully done with this film.
The terminology itself, everything, everywhere, all at once. What do you think that means? I mean, we hear it, it almost becomes a cliche at this point. But what would you identify that as its significance in terms of its meaning?
Wow, that's a very deep question. I mean, I think it conjures up a lot of different emotions. I mean, I think on the one hand, it's chaos, right? There's a little bit of that. Everything is happening all at once, but then at the same time, it's this omnipresence of everything, right? So some of the themes that it touches on is like the nihilism and or like the meaninglessness of life, but then also the optimism and the humanism. And so it's really all of these different emotions and concepts swirling around in all of our daily lives, right? Like from the time we wake up to the time we go to sleep at night, we may experience a range of emotions, and that's a little bit condensed in what we experience watching this roller coaster fun time of a film, but also with very deep, heartwarming feelings as well.
For sure. And amazing how you talked about this roller coaster of all types of emotions that go on. Okay, maybe we should go into some of the themes because you did make that inference just a moment ago. There's so much that we can really capitalize on. Maybe we can take them one by one, just in terms of what some of the things that I think most people can relate to and identify with. First of all, because of the Michelle Yeoh character, first, I'm such a fan of hers. And the fact that she said, and I remember reading this somewhere, she called this film a gift. Now, she has been someone who's been blessed with starring in so many different films. And she's been an iconic figure in Hollywood for so long, yet this was the film, well, maybe Crazy Rich Asians did, but I mean, this film in particular really did catapult her to that area of prominence, where she really was being recognized for the amount of years that she's spent in the industry, the amount of work she's done, the whole trajectory of what she really has identified as becoming and being an amazing actor. So I want to talk about her character in particular, as well as the relationship of that mother-daughter scenario. How do you look at that? Because it really did have some ebbs and flows, if you will. That relationship had its moments of being up here one minute and down here the next minute. So why was that an important theme, do you think, to address in the film?
I mean, it's almost become cliche now, right? We hear it so much that the specific is universal, and really to focus on one family's relationship, and specifically the mother-daughter relationship within that family, I think is also a universal feeling that maybe people, or not maybe, I'm sure people outside of a Chinese immigrant family certainly have some of those interpersonal relationships within their own families. And I mean, we do see a lot of a trend even of the storyline. I mean, so like even last year, there was a film called Umma, which was written by one of our writer alumni, stars Sandra Oh, and Umma means mother in Korean, and it was a whole mother-daughter storyline. And then even with Turning Red, with Pixar's Turning Red, like that's very much a mother-daughter storyline. And so it's really, I think, an interesting storyline that we've been seeing more and more of, and I think it was great to see it in this film as well.
Yeah, I do too. You know, when I was reading some of the information about the film, there's someone who mentioned that when I talked to you about the meaning behind the term itself, everything, everywhere, all at once, it was sort of like a what if, this happened. I mean, in a lot of cases in the film, we did see a lot of what ifs, because it was difficult to know how it was going to translate and how it was going to end up the way it did. And I'm not so sure I reconciled with how the ending actually did take place, because like you said before, this whole roller coaster aspect of how it goes on, there's so many different avenues that I think it could have taken, and the different shapes and ideologies that I think it represents. And so, I think what's cool about this is that I'm not sure if we're going to see the same kind of movie that makes us aware of what this genre will perhaps perpetuate. But I do think that we're going to be able to see a lot more films based on this, where we have more Asian actors, more Asian performers who are going to have their shot at films that really are much more universal than what we typically see. Do you agree with that?
I do, and I really hope that that's the case. And I think one of the beautiful things about this too is that it was Asian created, right? So when we look behind the camera, who is the one helming the story, and to have Daniel Kwan and Daniel Scheinert like really understanding what the stories are. Even there's a theme of like ADHD, which I don't know if you all know, but while working on this project, Daniel Kwan himself was diagnosed with ADHD, and
Oh,
so
I don't think I knew that.
he was saying, "Oh my gosh!" Like once he got diagnosed, everything clicked, and then he realized a lot more when as he was working on this project.
I don't think I was aware of that.
Yeah. So I mean that was an interesting
Yeah.
twist. I think
Yeah.
that he
Yeah.
also was able to discover about himself. And
Mhm.
I mean, this movie had a long journey. They started it in 2010, and they didn't start shooting. I think they announced it in 2018. Production wrapped in March of 2020 as the pandemic was surging or starting to really surge. And so it's had a very interesting timeline.
For sure. Now, how does your organization, for example, CAPE, help to promote the idea of generating many more performers, many more writers, many more producers, et cetera. I mean, because the thing is, when we've seen certain movies, for example, I'm going to use the Asian diaspora, if I can use that terminology, if you don't mind. We've seen this happen before in the past. For example, like with Joy Luck Club, if I can maybe use that as an example, or even Crazy Rich Asians. And I think what we have expected was that a lot more was going to take place, that we were going to see a lot more generated in terms of more of an identity that would take place with more craftsmanship, if you will, with performers and with actors. So how do we get to the point through your organization, for example, where that can be perpetuated?
Yeah, well, so CAPE was started in 1991, so we've been
Mhm.
around for 3 decades now, and really our work is done in three main tranches. So the first one is these pathway programs to really get people working in Hollywood. And we started with our Writers Fellowship 12 years ago because we said representation starts on the page. Like before
Mhm.
we can even get to who's being cast, we need to have the content written on the page. And so at this point now, we're very proud. We have our alumni writing on 70 shows across every major network and streamer. So shows that you've heard of: Grey's Anatomy, Lord of the Rings, House of the Dragon, Pachinko, you name it. And so very proud of that. And then 7 years ago, we went to the other end of the spectrum and we focused on executives, because that's another very key element in this ecosystem of
Mhm.
entertainment, is who is greenlighting the projects, who's shepherding them through to the end. And then since then, we've added programs for animation directors, assistants and coordinators, independent filmmakers, and we just launched a new program for showrunners, and we're announcing one for feature film um, independent filmmakers as well. And so there's a lot happening on that end of the spectrum. It's really there. It's the opportunities that are slim, right? Talent is universal, opportunities are not. And so it's for us to bridge that gap and help feed them into the Hollywood system. And then the second thing that we do is we do cultural script consulting and training for all of the studios. So from the time of IP acquisition all the way through promotion. And then that leads into the third bucket, which is promoting the films, which is what we did for Everything Everywhere All at Once.
So do we see a lot more? It sounds like a lot more is flourishing at this point. Is that
Oh,
is that accurate?
a lot more. I started working at Cape about 9 years ago, 1 month after a television show called Fresh Off the Boat
Oh yeah, I
premiered
know
on
it.
ABC. Yeah, so at that time, the conversation was, wow, this is the first time in 20 years since All American Girl in the 90s that we have an Asian American family on prime time on a major network. And since then, there has been a lot more shows and a lot of different types of shows, which has been really exciting to see. And I think we're just going to continue to push that narrative forward and to have, hopefully, more and different stories.
So when you have these meetings, for example, with executives,
Mm.
walk me through something that might happen. What's a typical situation that would transpire with your organization and these executives of the Hollywood syndrome? Tell me how that works. I think people might be interested to know. It doesn't just happen ordinarily, and it doesn't just happen overnight. And these things take a lot of work. So give me a thumbnail sketch in terms of how you go about conducting these meetings and getting more of an established situation where people are being properly identified for what they do, what they know, what their skill set is.
Yes. Well, as with most things, there is no typical answer, unfortunately. So I can give you a variety. So, for example, we do a partnership with the Blacklist, which is an online list that lists unproduced scripts. And so for the past 5 years, we've done one for the top Asian Pacific Islander scripts. And we've had a few optioned, we've had some made, which is very exciting. The Harvest was one that was made recently. And so it did the festival circuit, and it's got some really exciting momentum behind it, which is very exciting. There was another one that just wrapped production a few months ago. It's called Jersey Boy. It's a South Asian script. And so, like, really, I think we're at this point now where when we announce any kind of list or even our fellowship class, people pay attention.
Yeah.
We've gotten to the point now where with our writers fellowship, we used to announce all of our fellows at the very beginning. And now we've moved it to the end, because what would happen is, now that it's become such a recognized program, as soon as we announce, all the agents and managers are hitting up these brand new writers, and they're not equipped just yet.
Right.
So we pushed it farther down into their training. So I mean, that's been really exciting. And then as far as our conversations with the studios, it varies. So sometimes they're like, we just picked up this script. We're looking for a showrunner. Can you make some suggestions? Or we have a showrunner, now we're staffing our room. We have 10 episodes, we're looking for a director. And then as it progresses down the chain, then it's, okay, now we're at like production. We need some suggestions for casting, or can you post our casting notice, because we're looking for some really great talent. And then it becomes, can you watch the trailer? Can you read the script? Can you watch the rough cut? And so every step of the way, we're partnering with them. And in terms of our consulting, we always say it's not censorship, it's conversations. And so we see ourselves as partners with the studio to make the best product possible.
That's a very robust process, I must say. You mentioned a second ago, kind of intrigued me and piqued my interest. You mentioned, was it Jersey Boy? You mentioned something. Okay, I'm a Jersey girl. That's why it kind of piqued my interest. And can you tell me what that genre is? I mean, can you say anything about that, or is it way too premature?
It's a little bit early,
Uh-huh.
but yeah, it is. It's a Sikh story. So he's Sikh American, and it was around the time of 9/11, and just it's a drama. It's
Uh-huh.
like a family drama. Yeah.
Okay. It sounds pretty cool then. I'm going to be looking out for that then.
Yes,
I
please
feel like I
do.
have a vested interest in it.
That's amazing. I love that.
Right, exactly, exactly. All right, so you said 30 years and you've been around. And so it just sounds as though there might be some situations where, it seems like you really shouldn't have to have this kind of an organization to find the right people. I mean, and someone like I, being a woman of color, I know exactly what you're talking about when you're suggesting that, there are avenues that have not always been opened up to us. The doors have not been open. And thankfully, through CAPE, you're having this open door policy where you're getting people to really take a look very rationally and very reasonably in terms of what is out there. And I think that that's such a credit to what you're doing. So the 30-year progress that you've been able to manage is quite successful. I think it's very hopeful for, I'm sure, a lot of people too.
No, I appreciate that. And actually, the inbound requests that we get is now outstripping the capacity of our 4-person team. And so we are developing a database that will be public facing, that'll people be able to access themselves. It'll be free. And so that's something that we're very excited and proud of.
That's
Because
fantastic.
for so long that has been the excuse of like, well, we wanted to hire
But
someone, but
we
we
can't find
can't
anybody,
find them.
right?
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
so identify with what you're saying. I appreciate what you're doing with Cape. Let's just go back a little bit with the film because I
Yeah,
just
of
want to make sure that we cover a few more areas. Uh,
course.
in terms of here's what I'm looking at, because I saw this also as looking toward the great American dream, and I don't know if that's even considerate of what we see today. We're all trying to find something, but it seems, I mean, the family was going through a lot. They had money issues, tax problems, etc., on the verge of divorce. I mean, these are all things that are central to so many of us. Yet we're still looking for that nugget that helps us get to where we need to go and to help us achieve. Do you think that through the story itself, the storyline itself, that they were able to get to that perspective, that they were able to get there to reach that goal?
I mean, I think so, and I think that's probably one of the brilliant points of the film, is because it was so layered, and there was like the multiverse aspect, and I, it's one of those things that people can draw their different conclusions about.
Hmm.
So I remember I was actually one of the first people outside of A24 to watch the film. We were in a small screening room in Beverly Hills, and when we walked in, we were given no information about what this film was about. And the A24 folks just said, it's about laundry and taxes. Yeah, don't worry about it. Just watch it. And we were just all blown away. And it was one of those things where it's better if you go in cold and go for the ride, and then you that's why I think what I was saying is sometimes it takes multiple viewings because you'll get something different each time. And so
Yeah.
I think it's tricky because to answer your question, I think they get there, but reasonable people may disagree on what that there is, right?
Yeah, that's true. That may be hard to define. I got to ask this question because as I remember going back to the film, and I like you saw it a couple of times, and you kind of have to go back several times to really make certain that you get every aspect that offers clarity. Okay,
Mhm.
so this part, I have to tell you, I had some angst, maybe. I don't know if that's the right word, but I'm going to use it anyway, about the raccoon and the hot dogs, okay, and the bagels and the googly eyes. Help me understand. Did I miss something?
Yeah, I mean, that's something you might have to ask Daniels about. It's that was also, I mean, part of the absurdist the nature of it, but also the different the multiverse. I mean, I read something about it being about a metaphor for the immigrant experience, or the
Mhm.
splitting, or the experience of the hyphenated Asian American experience. But I actually have not had a direct conversation with either of them about it, so I'm not really equipped to
That's
opine.
probably why they wouldn't let you know too much about the film when you first seen it, because you probably would have said, "Huh?
What?
What's going on here?" Right?
It's just, but it's also very brilliant marketing. So A24 had this auction. I don't know if you saw this, but it's after the film, and Rakakuni, they had the actual, I don't know, a stuffed what the doll, and it went for
Uh-huh.
like $88,000 or something. Like it was. I mean, it was so brilliant, and I have to hats off to the A24 marketing team over there. They are wonderful. They're so brilliant. They even did like a pet rock like merch thing, because that scene with the rocks. Oh my gosh, that affected me so hard, and it was like it's rocks, and so
Right?
it's just really a tribute to Daniels as directors, because
Right. Sometimes whenever we talk about certain movies, we always want to think, is there going to be a sequel? So, I mean, I don't even know how I don't
yeah,
know how I'm asking you the question, but I'm
no,
going to ask you the question. Can you ascertain if there could ever possibly be a sequel to what we just saw?
gosh. I mean, in today's day and age, there seems to be sequels of everything, but this is one that I don't know if I would want one. It's so
Right.
perfect in its perfection, in its creation. So I'm not sure
Uh-huh.
actually, but
What
who
was
knows?
the I'm
Who
sorry, I missed what you just said. I apologize.
I mean, who knows, right? There could be lots of spin-offs of all the different universes.
Exactly, exactly. Was there a part that you just kind of looked at and said, I get it, or it's too weird, or why'd they put that in the movie? Was there a specific scene that you could kind of draw upon to say, that's kind of not what I expected?
I mean, they threw so much into this,
Yeah.
and it's a little bit of their sensibility to their first film, Swiss Army Man, is a little bit on this like absurdist
Uh-huh.
spectrum here, and so I think for me, where it took it to another level was the whole butt plug stuff. That was something I was not expecting at all from this kind of film, but
Okay. I'm going to laugh at that because it was a little on the crazy side, right? did I did I read that you do comedy?
oh yes, I do improv.
Okay, could you tell me about that?
Before my career as Cape Executive Director, I was a lawyer, and there's a lot of improv classes here in Los Angeles, as I'm sure you can imagine. And so I took it hoping that it would help me with my legal abilities to like think on my feet and be able to present to a jury. And
Uh-huh.
it was so much fun, and I now think everyone in the world should take an improv class. It teaches you so much about listening, cooperation. I mean, the whole thing is built on yes and affirming the people around you. And so I've actually incorporated improv into a lot of our curriculum for our fellowships, because writers, a lot of times they're in their heads a lot,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
improv really draws you out of it. And I think that really helps, and even on the exec side as well. So I strongly feel that improv helps. It's one of the most important forms of communication, because there's no
Mm,
scripts, there's no sets, there's nothing, right? It's just
right.
you and
It's
one
just
other
raw.
person,
It's
right?
raw.
And
Yeah.
you're creating the scene on the spot. And I cannot overstate the learnings and the importance of that. So if there's an improv class where you all are, sign up. It's fun.
But what drew you to it?
I had some friends that did it, and there's this really great group here. It's called Cold Tofu. It was formed by 3 or 4 Asian women many decades ago, and it was very welcoming and a lot of fun.
I may have to take you up on that, Michelle. I think
Yes,
I'm a little nervous, but if you're telling me that it really does help, then it might work.
there's
I'm
no
not
need
so
to.
sure, but
Yeah,
I may take you up on it.
I'm going to follow up with you, Cheryl,
Okay,
and
we'll
yeah,
make it happen.
there
Listen,
seems to be.
it was a real delight to speak with you about the film. There's so much I think we can extrapolate from it, and I think that your organization in particular is doing such an amazing job to help propel the level of people that we need to see, people who need to be seen, people whose work needs to be admired, looked at, regarded, however you want to express it. Because I think there's such an industry out there that doesn't always tap on the right resources. And I think through CAPE, they will. So we thank you for what you're doing, the 9 years that you've been with the organization and the 30 years that they've been working so successfully, because I think it really is making a huge difference in Hollywood and beyond. So we're going to be looking forward to seeing a lot more people through CAPE get opportunities that are going to be golden. And I think that that's so great that you're doing. And we thank you so much. Is there anything you need to plug about it in terms of anything that's upcoming?
This is screening during Asian Pacific Islander Heritage Month, so thank you for all coming out and supporting. And I think something that's really important for us is when a film comes out like this, to please support it in the theaters. And I'm very excited to see what Daniels will do next. So, fun fact: it's Daniels, not the Daniels. It's
Okay.
one of their quirky.
Okay.
They're great and so talented, and so really thank you for coming to watch the film and for supporting it.
Thank you for allowing us to interview you for the Ridgefield Playhouse, because we think that what we're doing really does help, and it really does make people think. It helps them to understand what the nuances are that are so important and so current. And so this is what's great about what we do. And we appreciate you, Michelle, for joining us today on this edition of Reel to Reel. Thank you so much. And we'll be looking forward to seeing a whole lot more coming out of your organization, CAPE.
Incredible. Thank you so much.
Michelle, we thank you so much. We also want to thank Aquarian Water Company for sponsoring this Beyond the Story feature of Reel to Reel. And we will see you the next time right here at the Ridgefield Playhouse. I'm Cheryl Washington. See you the next time. Thank you.